You have been told that Set is the villain, the god of chaos, the murderer in the sacred story of the gods, the cosmic anarchist whose only desire is to tear down the ordered world. You see him as the shadow, the necessary evil, the force of storms, violence, and the barren red desert. This is the simple, dualistic portrait painted for you, a morality play of good versus evil, light versus dark. But that story is a nursery rhyme, a carefully simplified fable designed to conceal a truth so profound and so dangerous that it had to be buried under layers of myth. What if chaos isn't what you think it is? What if it's not just a force of random destruction, but the raw, untamed, and primordial source code of creation itself? And what if Set was not its mindless servant, but the first being in all of existence to understand its power, to harness it, and to wield it as a weapon? The real story of Set is not about jealousy or a petty grab for a throne. It is the story of a cosmic rebellion, a philosophical war waged at the very foundation of reality. It is the story of a weapon, an artifact so terrifyingly powerful that it could not only kill a god, but could potentially unmake the heavens. A weapon forged not of star metal or divine light, but of the very first moment of non-being, the first splinter of chaos that was sheared from the face of the infinite when creation began. This is the secret that the priesthoods of Egypt encoded in their deepest mysteries, a secret they guarded with their lives. Because to understand Set is to understand the terrifying power of the individual will when it seeks to sever itself from the whole. And to understand his weapon is to understand the frequency that has been poisoning our world for millennia, a subtle vibration of separation that now forms the very foundation of our modern, fractured reality. The story you know is a shadow on the cave wall. It is time to turn around and face the fire. The public story, the one repeated in scrolls and whispered to children, is a drama of family betrayal. Osiris, the wise and benevolent king who brought civilization to the world, is the embodiment of divine order. Ma'at, his brother, Set, consumed by jealousy of Osiris's power and his fruitful union with the goddess Isis, plots his demise. He tricks Osiris, sealing him in a beautifully crafted chest and casting him into the Nile. But this is not enough for Set's rage. He later finds the body of his brother and, in a final act of desecration, tears it into 14 pieces, scattering them across the length of Egypt. It is a tale of brutal, earthly passion, a story that explains the eternal struggle between order and disorder, civilization and the wild. It gives us a clear villain and a clear hero. It gives us a framework for understanding suffering and the eventual triumph of light over darkness as Horus, the son of Osiris, rises to avenge his father and reclaim the throne. This story is true, but only as a metaphor. It is the esoteric teaching, the vessel that carries a much deeper, esoteric reality. To the initiates of the inner temples, Set was never just a jealous brother. He was the embodiment of a cosmic principle that is absolutely essential for existence as you know it, the principle of severance. Before creation, there was only the one, a state of perfect, undifferentiated unity. For consciousness to experience itself, for there to be a you and a me, for there to be stars and planets and individual thoughts, that unity had to be broken. The one had to become the many. This act of breaking, this initial cleaving of reality into separate parts, is the domain of Set. He is the force that draws boundaries. He is the power that creates the ego, the sense of an I that is separate from the all. Without Set, there is no individuality, no self-awareness, no experience. There is only the silent, dreamless ocean of the unmanifested whole. He is not, therefore, inherently evil. He is inherently dangerous. The power of severance, of individuation, is the very power that allows a soul to forget its source. It is the power that gives birth to the ego, and the ego is the source of all conflict, all fear, and all suffering. Set represents the razor's edge of consciousness. On one side lies the path of the individuated soul, a being who is aware of its uniqueness, but remembers its connection to the whole. On the other side lies the path of the isolated ego, a consciousness so severed from its source that it believes it is its own God, a being that sees the rest of creation not as part of itself, but as something to be conquered, controlled, and dominated. The priests of Egypt understood that this was the single greatest test facing every soul, both human and divine. And the myth of Osiris and Set was not a history of the past. It was a map of this eternal, internal choice. Osiris is the path of remembered unity. Set is the path of willful separation, and the weapon he used to shatter that unity was not just a tool of murder. It was the physical manifestation of his own cosmic principle. The weapon is known in the hieroglyphs. You have seen it countless times and never recognized it for what it is. It is the Was-scepter, a long, straight staff with a forked base and a stylized animal head at its peak. The Egyptologists will tell you it is a symbol of power, of dominion, a ceremonial object carried by gods and pharaohs. And they are not wrong, but they are only reading the surface. The true nature of the scepter was one of the deepest secrets of the mystery schools. It was not a symbol of power. It was the source of a particular kind of power. The power of Isfet, the Egyptian term for chaos, for the lie, for the force that stands in opposition to Ma'at. This scepter was not forged by any craftsman, divine or mortal. It was not made of metal, wood, or stone. It was, according to the forbidden texts, a piece of the pre-creation itself. Imagine the moment before the Big Bang, the state of pure potential, the unmanifested void. When the first spark of divine will ignited creation, when the One proclaimed its own existence and began the process of expansion, a single infinitesimal splinter of that original chaotic void was left behind. It was the echo of non-existence, a piece of absolute nothingness that was now trapped within the new reality of somethingness. It was a paradox, a cosmic impossibility, a substance that was defined by its own lack of properties. This splinter of Isfet was not evil. It was pure potential, untamed and undirected, but like a singularity, it held within it the power to collapse all order back into itself. It was the universe's self-destruct code. For eons, this splinter of primordial chaos drifted through the currents of the newly forming cosmos, repelled by the growing order of Ma'at. It could not be destroyed because it was, by its nature, the principle of destruction. It could only be avoided. The gods, the architects of form and order, built their realities around it, giving it a wide berth, for they understood that its frequency was antithetical to life itself. But Set was different. The other gods were beings of Ma'at, of unity and connection. Their very essence was interwoven with the fabric of creation. Set, as the principle of severance, was the one being whose nature did not repel the chaos. It resonated with it. He was not a being of unity. He was the force that broke unity, and so he was drawn to the splinter of Isfet, and it was drawn to him. He did not find it by searching. He found it by feeling. he followed the thread of his own nature back to its most absolute expression. When he found the splinter, he did not recoil from its emptiness. He recognized it. He saw in its perfect negation a reflection of his own drive for absolute separation, and because his frequency was already aligned with the act of severing, he was the only being in the cosmos who could approach it, touch it, and shape it without being instantly unmade. He didn't forge the weapon with heat or pressure. He commanded it with his will. He drew it out, giving the formless chaos a form, the form of the Was-scepter. The animal head at its peak is said to be the Set animal, a creature that has never been identified by zoologists because it is not of this world. It is a symbol of a consciousness that is neither one thing nor another, a being that exists in a state of perpetual otherness. The forked base represents its function, to divide, to split, to create two from one. The scepter he now held was not a weapon in the way you understand it. It did not cut, burn, or crush. It operated on a far more fundamental level. When pointed at any object, any being, any structure, it did not destroy it. It unmade it. It projected a field of pure negation that dissolved the energetic bonds, the very patterns of information that held that thing together in reality. It did not turn a key, temple to rubble. It turned the temple back into the idea of a temple and then back into nothing. It did not kill a living being. It erased its spiritual signature from the book of life, severing its past, its present, and its future from the tapestry of existence. It was the power to create wholes in reality. It was the ultimate expression of severance. And with this terrifying new power in his hand, the cosmic principle of separation now had a tool to challenge the cosmic principle of unity. The board was set for a conflict that would not just decide the fate of a throne, but the very nature of consciousness on Earth. The murder of Osiris, as it is commonly told, is a story of physical brutality. But the true act was far more insidious, a display of power so absolute that it has echoed through our collective consciousness for ages. This was not a simple act of violence. It was a metaphysical assassination, a ritual designed to prove a terrifying philosophical point that the individuated will, the power of Isfet, could overcome the divine order of Ma'at. Set did not need to trick Osiris into a coffin. That part of the myth is a screen, a metaphor for a process far more complex. The real confrontation happened on a plane of existence where consciousness itself is the landscape. Osiris, as the embodiment of Ma'at, was more than just a god-king. He was the central anchor of the planet's coherent energetic field. His consciousness was a resonant nexus through which the higher frequencies of divine order flowed into the world. To kill Osiris in the conventional sense would have been meaningless. His spirit would have simply transitioned. His influence would have remained. Set's goal was not to banish his brother. It was to dismantle him. It was to shatter the very idea of him, to prove that even the most cohesive and powerful expression of unity could be broken apart by the focused application of severance. The confrontation was a war of frequency. Osiris held the vibration of unity, of we are all one. Set, wielding the Was-scepter, held the vibration of separation, of I am that I am, and I am not you. The scepter of Isfet was the key. It was the one tool in all of creation that could amplify the power of severance to an absolute degree. When Set struck, he did not aim at Osiris's body. He aimed at his Ka, his energetic double, the very blueprint of his divine essence. The scepter did not project a bolt of energy. It projected a wave of pure negation, It was a frequency that did not oppose the frequency of Osiris. It cancelled it out. It was a blast of silence aimed at a symphony. The effect was catastrophic. The coherent field of Osiris's consciousness, the very thing that held him together as a divine being, was shattered. It did not just break, it fragmented. The myth tells us that Set tore the body into 14 pieces. This is the esoteric key. The number 14 is not random. It corresponds to the lunar cycle, to the waxing and waning of light, and more deeply, to the foundational aspects of creation. The 14 pieces were not parts of a physical body. They were the essential components of Osiris's divine consciousness, his wisdom, his compassion, his creative power, his connection to the cycles of life, and so on. These 14 aspects were violently severed from each other and from their source. The God of unity was himself disunified, his essence scattered across the physical and metaphysical dimensions of the world. A piece was thrown into the river, a piece buried in the desert, a piece hidden in the sky. This is a map. It is telling us that the memory of our own divine unity was fragmented and cast into all corners of our reality. This was Set's ultimate victory. He had not just killed a king, he had broken a paradigm. He had demonstrated that the force of separation could overwhelm the force of connection. The murder of Osiris was the first act in a cosmic coup d'etat. With the primary anchor of Ma'at shattered, the frequency of coherence on the planet began to waver. A dissonant hum entered the song of creation. This was the opening Set needed. His goal was not to rule over a kingdom of dust and stone. It was to create a new kind of reality, a reality based on his own nature. A world of division, of competition, of isolated egos, each striving for their own dominion. A world where the memory of unity was a forgotten dream. He had shattered the mirror of the divine, and now all beings would see only their own fragmented reflection. The scattering of Osiris's body was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of ours. It was the moment our world began its long descent into the age of separation, the age of the isolated self, the age ruled by the silent, echoing frequency of Set's forbidden weapon.